Hello, and welcome to Central Booking, where writers and readers are the authority. I'm your host, John Valeri. Today, I'm joined by Connecticut's own Liz Delton, author, crafter, notorious rereader, and all-around creative dynamo. Liz is the author of several YA novels that feature fierce heroines in fantastic worlds, elements that captured her attention as a young reader and still inspire her taste today, both as a reader and a writer. Her first series, the Arcera Trilogy, follows the adventures of Sylvia Thorne, who is unwittingly made the messenger in a declaration of war from Sky City, the first war the four cities of Arcera have seen in 1,000 years. The trilogy is now available on Amazon in a 3 ebook collection with new cover art. Liz's newest book, The Storm King, is the second entry in her Realm of Camellia saga featuring Kira Savage, a seemingly normal girl drawn into an extraordinary world where the battle between light and shadow magic is being fought. The series launched with the Starless Girl in 2019 and is expected to include 2 more books. Liz is also the author of Writer's Notebook, a guided journal to plan your story, written for aspiring and accomplished writers alike. From conception and character development to setting and plot structure, this interactive book is designed to help writers along every step of their path to publication. And in her spare time, Liz runs LD Writes and Designs, an online Etsy shop that offers unique book accessories such as custom bookmarks, as well as signed copies of all her print titles. The shop has garnered lots of 5-star ratings, just like her books. That's the Cliff Notes version of Liz Delton's literary life, but I'll let her fill in some of the finer details for you. Hi, everybody. I am thrilled to be in conversation with one of Connecticut's own tonight, Liz Delton, who is the author of The Writer's Notebook and several other works that we're going to talk about. Thank you for being here, Liz. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, you are a brave person. Welcome to it. So anyway, I figured we would start sort of at the beginning, and I wanted to ask you about your first memories of books and reading. So are there any books you specifically remember from childhood, and do you have a point in time where you can say that that's when I knew I wanted to be a writer?
Well, I'll kind of answer the second part first, but I didn't realize I wanted to be a writer until until after college. But the books that are the most memorable for when I was younger, I read a lot of Tamora Pierce in middle school, and I actually still own 2 of the series that I loved in middle school. It's the Immortals Quartet and the Alana the Lady Knight series. And they're actually on my favorite shelf on my bookcase. And I just really loved them because the world building was just amazing. And the major part was because they all had young female, like strong characters leading them. And that has really influenced my writing now that I'm older. And yeah, I actually reread them last year, I want to say, and they did hold up. I still really enjoyed them.
That's how you know it's a good book, when you read it again and it's actually as good as you remembered and sometimes better. You have led me quite nicely into my next question for you, because you are a self-proclaimed notorious rereader. So I wanted to ask you about that, what some of those books are, why it is that you revisit them, and also, is it difficult when there's all these books that you love to also find time to, find new books and authors, and how do you balance that?
Yeah, it is tough because I do have a very long TBR list, and I feel bad when I jump back into a book that I've read 10, 20 times, but I'm doing a reread right now of one of my favorite series. Kim Harrison has a new book coming out in June, and I'm rereading her series, The Hollows. I've probably read it 10 times. And the reason I reread books so often is because I love the characters so much. They're like my friends. Harry Potter is the other one that I'm guilty of rereading, and I read that one every year. I usually start it in the fall. I don't know why it makes me think of the fall and winter, but I just like going back and reading the characters again and getting, more of a perspective on the story, even though I totally know what's going to happen. I will continue to read them over and over. But I do feel bad when there's a lot of new books that I want to read. So I'll switch over once I'm finished like rereading something and read a bunch of new stuff, and then I'll jump back into something old.
Or, well, maybe you'll be surprised one day and, things will happen how you did not remember them happening. And then you
Yeah,
worry. The books are
yeah.
changing. So I wanted to ask you generally about your books, and we'll get more specific as we go on, but yours are, and you mentioned this, largely oriented around fierce heroines and fantastic worlds. So can you
Mhm.
tell me, what compels you to write about those two things and what you hope that writing about those might instill in your readers?
Yeah, well, I love writing, I love world building. So the fantastic worlds is my favorite part of writing. I love just sitting down with a notebook and figuring out all the details and what things look like visually, how things work, if there's magic, like in the Realm of Camellia series, and to work out all the magic details, or if it's just in a different time, like my Arcera trilogy is dystopian. So I had to work out, how things were connected and politics and things like that. So I really like diving into the nitty gritty details of world building. And then on the other side, the fierce heroines kind of goes back to what I used to read as a young girl. I really like creating strong characters that girls can relate to and see themselves in or just see in another person, um, and just they can lead the story on their own, but they do have friends to help them.
Sure. And actually, you mentioned that. I did want to talk about this a little bit more, that world building is your favorite part. And I was thinking about that, and I'm assuming, on the one hand, it must be really, really liberating because you can do whatever you want and you have a completely blank canvas. But on the other hand, I'm thinking I have trouble like choosing between three things. So I'm like, I think I would be completely overwhelmed when all you have is choices and everything is up to you. So can you talk about um, how you start that process and how it sort of narrows down for you, and then that you're in the world that you're meant to be in?
Yeah, well, it starts with just vague ideas. So I don't, or like very small details that I'll put together. So it just starts off. I usually get a notebook, hence why I wrote the writer's notebook. Um, and I'll just compile all of the tiny little random details that I came up with when I was driving or washing the dishes, and or like the general themes that I was feeling. When I was writing The Realm of Camellia, the first book, The Starless Girl, I kept this one journal and I would take it on a walk with me and write down all these notes. And um, it was kind of hard creating this magical world that was like a parallel universe, because I actually wasn't sure if I wanted it to be a parallel universe and a portal fantasy, or if I wanted it just to be like an epic fantasy, its own world, not connected to the real world. I actually did like a pros and cons list as to whether I wanted it to be connected to the real world or not. But I really admire Alice in Wonderland, The Wizard of Oz, a couple other kind of portal stories. So I wanted to lean in that direction. But it's basically a lot of writing down details is how I do it.
Oh, well, I should commend you on that because I think all the time that's such a great idea. I'll never forget it. Why do I have to write it down? And all I remember is that I had an idea. Well,
Yeah.
now I have your writer's notebook, so I think I'm, moving in the right direction. Um, But anyway, so yeah, moving right along. But can I ask you, so you mostly write for a young adult audience, uh, and obviously those are books that still speak to you. And I really enjoy, young adult as well. I think they're very immediate and timely, sometimes in ways that adult novels aren't.
Mhm.
But can you talk about why that either that genre or that demographic appeals to you, and also how writing for a teen audience differs than writing for a younger or older audience.
Yeah, so it appeals to me because the books are very universally liked by young adults, obviously, and they can be read by anyone. And so I really like that they can have universal appeal. But I mainly started it because I read a lot when I was in middle school, and it was a great escape. Um, and I just loved, losing myself in a fantastic world. And I just want to provide new stories for more young adults. And yeah, so I like to continue to write in that genre. And I think it's very popular. Not just young adults read it, as you mentioned. And I'll continue to read it for a long time.
And reread it after that.
Yeah.
But it's so true because a lot of times, I'll have to slog through something, and at the end of it, it's like I just want something, quick and smart and fast paced. And the pacing in a young adult novel tends to be a lot quicker, oftentimes than an adult novel because you have to, catch the attention and you can never really lose it. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that that still appeals to a lot
Hmm.
of us. And it's
Yeah.
nice too that, children and adults can sort of read these books and then sort of meet in the middle. So it's nice that you can sort of invite other people into it.
Hmm.
But let me ask you, because you already talked about the realm of Camellia in your first book, and you have a second book in that series coming out on Tuesday, June 8th, 9th,
Hmm.
9th, June 9th.
Nice.
My birthday's June 8th. My birthday's not a Tuesday. Release days are Tuesdays. But so that is The Storm King, and Kira is the heroine of that saga. So can you tell us a little bit about her journey and the continuation of her journey and sort of, what she's learned and what she has yet to learn?
Yeah. Well, I'll show off. I have the proof copy I received last week of The Storm King. Gorgeous cover, in my opinion.
Awesome. Oh, yeah.
um, so that's Kira's story, as you mentioned. Kira traveled to the realm of Camellia by accident. She was chased there by a creature made of shadows, and she started seeing light in everything around her. And as you might imagine, she was confused. She didn't know what it was. But she started training at a temple in the realm of Camellia for light magic. And she realized that this is magic. I can use it and I can protect myself with it because the shadow creatures that chased her through the door are going to keep following her. So in the first book, The Starless Girl, she learns about her heritage, why she was pulled into the realm of Camellia. I'm not going to spoil it in case you want to. um, and what connection she has to the realm. The Storm King is immediately following. There are mage of the Shadow region is called the Storm King, and he is heavily involved in the plot of the first book. And he comes to Kira's temple in the second book for peace talks. And he's one of my favorite characters to write because he's kind of like this villain, but he's kind of goofy, but he's all powerful. And he'll go on a horse ride with you and race horses, and he's very, very curious and mysterious.
Right. And I wanted to ask you too, so it is the second book in the series. So how do you feel? Will people who might be new to the saga, can they fall right into this book? I know, oftentimes they're better read together, but some people just want to start with what's newest. So can you talk about how that experience might be for the new reader and how you balance a standalone plot with an overall story that evolves from book to book?
Yeah, so I mean, there is a standalone storyline in this book. Kira's beset by a new mysterious force in the realm. I do, for new readers and old, recap events of the first book, what her heritage is and why she's trying to figure out who was summoning the shadow creature still. And I do recommend that the first book is read first, but I think there's probably enough information to understand what's going on and follow Kira's story in the second book.
Sure, and I was going to say too, I was on your website a little bit earlier, and there's a sample chapter that people can read if they want to. I mean, by the time this goes up, it's either going to be the day that the book comes out or possibly the day before. So it'll be a real short tease. But even in that first chapter, I think you got a good feel of what happened, because I hadn't read the first book, but I feel like I have a decent idea. So if people want to check that out on your website, that's a kind of cool tease to lead into this new book.
Yeah, and it's always a difficult balance of trying to add in the exposition, but not too much, because you don't want to, be repetitive and annoying. But you got to put in enough, so if you haven't read the first book in a year, you remember what's going on, or if you haven't read it, so you kind of know what's going on.
Yeah, that's the hard thing, because there are people that know everything and people that know nothing, and you have to find a way to satisfy them both.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. I think everybody struggles a little bit with that. And can you tell me too, see, I'm going off script, I tend to do that, but when we talk about fantasy and other worlds, still there are themes and issues that are very real and that relate to everyday life. So can you talk a little bit about even though how Kira's in this realm that's otherworldly, she's experiencing things and has experienced things that everyday teenagers who just live in this world that you and I inhabit will relate to. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. In the first book, The Starless Girl, she goes through a lot of problems that are kind of universal, whether you're in a parallel universe or in our world. She's brand new at the temple that she's training in light magic in, and bonus factor, she has to hide her identity of who she is. So the book kind of focuses on her finding her true self, which is very important for everybody. And so she has to make friends, but she's still hiding who she really is. She's learning about this new world, and there are people there who don't like her because they think she comes from a particular place, and she can't contradict them because she's undercover, basically. And so it's just a lot of kind of common issues for anyone in a new environment, starting a new school, meeting new people, and figuring out who you really are in all of that, and just trying to get to know yourself. And in the meantime, she's trying to learn how to use her light magic, which is, average. Average teenage issue.
And can I ask you too, do you envision this as something that's going to continue to evolve and go on, or is it a two-part story?
It's a 4 planned books series, yeah. My first series I worked on, I did a trilogy, the Sarah trilogy, and when I was planning this one, I said, I want to do 4 books instead this time.
Why not?
That's the only reason why.
It seems like the next logical thing.
Of course. I don't plan on writing a 5-book series next, but you never know.
That's what you say now. We'll pull this up someday and be like, this is where she said she didn't plan on doing it. But we all know how those plans go.
She's up to 10.
That's right. Why sell yourself short when you can do the epic saga? So actually, let me ask you, you had mentioned a couple of times your earlier trilogy, and I know that it's available now as sort of like a 3-book ebook deal, and it has some new cover art, which are really catchy. So can you tell people, one, a little bit about that storyline for those books, and also where they can get that ebook set if they would like to?
Sure. So that's a dystopian trilogy, and it also has a prequel. I call it a novelette. It's not a short story. It's it's about 8 normal chapters, And it's on Amazon as an ebook and paperback. You can find it in some bookstores as well, and it's actually in production for an audiobook right now.
Nice.
I'm waiting not so patiently for it to be quality controlled. But yeah, I did recently bundle it into an ebook set and redo the covers, which I think look fantastic. And as I mentioned, it's dystopian. When Hunger Games and Divergent came out, I was like blown away by these dystopian stories, and I said, I want to write a dystopian story, but I don't want to write one of those ones. Um, so I did my sit down and all my world building, and I came up with what I think of as a very unique dystopian setting. It's set in 1,000 years in the future, and things have gone back to a very simple time. The main characters live in a world where there's only 4 cities left, and solar is like their only technology. The main character, Sylvia, travels between cities delivering messages for a living. And the day that the book opens, she delivers a message that is a declaration of war. And it's her and her friend's stories trying to stop the war from ruining Meadow City. And yeah, I just thought I'll try my own dystopian world, and that's what happened.
That's awesome. And there's something, Trilogy just sounds really cool. Like I hear Trilogy and I just always want to know all about it because it's a trilogy. I'm not saying it's a good reason, but
Right.
maybe it's like a
It's a good,
quadrilogy or whatever when you have 4 books. I don't know.
yeah, a trilogy is a good round number of books.
No, it really is until people love the third one so much that you either have to write a fourth one or a prequel, but
Hmm.
stay tuned, it can happen. Um, so let me ask you, a recent book. You have Writer's Notebook out now, which is a guided journal to plan your story. A bit of a departure, obviously, from the books that we've been talking about because it's very much grounded in reality, and it's for people who have either written and just want some guidance, or maybe newbie authors who also sort of need a little bit of guidance. They don't know how to plan, plot, or produce. But can you talk about what inspired you to write that book, come up with a different kind of book?
Yeah, I honestly, I there was a passing comment I got from a fellow author, and they mentioned that they thought my plotting and world building was really great. I think they were beta reading something for me, and I was like, well, I have all these charts that I use, and I have all this stuff on my computer. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I was thinking about it later, and I went and looked at all my charts, and I was like, this stuff is kind of cool. I wish I could share it with other authors. So I was kind of trying to think of the best way to do that. And I thought maybe a blog post or a webinar of some sort. And I was like, what would be really cool is if I made a workbook. And it just went from there very quickly. I do a lot of fiddling around in Word and creating forms in my other lives. So I just went and just made all these pages and pages, and it just took off as soon as I had the idea.
Sure. I'm gonna hold it up again real quick so people can see. It's a cool little book. I love these things are like my crack. I don't need drugs. I need books about craft, which is
Yep.
probably why I don't do enough writing because I'm always reading about how to write. But can you talk a little bit about? It's a very interactive book, which is great. So can you talk a little bit about the elements that people will find in this book and how that will help them in their own process? Because like I mentioned, it's not only plotting, but you really help with production as well. So it's sort of from conception to the point where you actually get down to the nitty gritty of writing.
Yeah. So users of the book can go through and they can develop their characters, their setting, and most importantly, their plot. And it's, as you mentioned, it's a notebook, so you write in it. And you can really go through, and you don't have to do it in order. You can just jot down notes as you think of them. There's blank pages everywhere, but they're categorized, so you can say, oh, okay, I have that random note about character, her hair color is blue because of this reason. I can throw that on that page. And that way you have it later and not just scraps of paper, which used to happen to me. I would come home from work and I literally have just scraps of paper in my pocket with like one word on them. And I'm like, what does this mean? um, so the notebook is just, a singular place where you can put all your ideas for a story and just flesh it out. And I included all in the plotting section, a lot of my tools that I used throughout the years, and just various charts and couple of things like the 3-act plot structure. You can draw your own, act 1, 2, and 3. This happens here. This is where the climax is. So I really just wanted to make a tool that was kind of universal. As you mentioned, it's for new and seasoned writers. So there isn't a ton of instruction because I didn't want to be like overwhelming. And I also don't think that I'm like, I don't know if I'm experienced enough to say, oh, this is how you should write your book. But I can give some pointers on plotting and information storage.
Sure, sure. And I think the cool thing too is, it's a great resource to hold on to. If you're going to write more books, if it's a series and this is the beginning of something, because a lot of authors will talk about, they're writing a series and they have the Bible because, they can't remember somebody's height or their eye color or their hair color or their allergies or whatever it is, because they might not think that they're going to revisit these characters. And so then they spend all this time, flipping through a book that's already been written because they just can't remember. But
Yeah.
there will be those people who know the characters so well that they will point out, if somebody had hazel eyes in book 1 and brown eyes in book 2, you would probably be that person. You would know. But I think it's a really cool keepsake, that when you're done with the book, you can reference not only your plot, but your characters and everything about them. And then it's sort of right there at your fingertips.
Right. Yeah. And for the books that I've written before I had the writer's notebook, I have like little, story notebooks. All my notes are together so I can go back and look. And as I go and plot my next books, I'm going to use my notebook, and that way I can slide those onto the shelf next to the books and just put them all together.
Sure. Yeah, I was thinking it would have been helpful for me. A couple of years ago, I had a couple of short stories in an anthology, and when the proof copy came in and I had to go through it, I realized in 2 stories I had 3 people with the same name. Like, oops.
It's a good name.
Right? Yeah, I guess so. I'm like, what does that mean? Why is it this name? It's not my name. But that would have helped. But let me ask you too, I like the idea that it's a guided journal. And I think that, especially now, so many people are experiencing, anxiety. They're having difficulty with production. Not everybody. I mean, I guess some people are more productive, but a lot of people are having a lot of difficulty focusing, given COVID-19 and just the uncertainty of the times that we're living in. So I know that you have continued to be productive, but do you find yourself returning to those same strategies again and again to give yourself a little bit more focus when you need it?
Yeah, definitely. In the beginning of all of this is actually when the writer's notebook came out, and I was not able to write for a while. I just didn't have any motivation, and luckily I had plenty of other author duties to take care of. So, um, but when I need some motivation, I will pull up, open up one of my little charts or lists, and just kind of fiddle around with world building or something like that. That way I feel like I'm in the story. If I can't get any words on the page, I'm at least, doing something. Um, but lately I've been focusing on kind of planning some more books that are gonna, I'm working on a 5-year plan. So
Good to have
um,
goals.
so I have been doing some more writing, and I'm trying to keep myself more accountable for the amount of words that I write in, a certain amount of time. So I feel like that helps me.
Sure. And I guess I was going to mention this a little bit later, but we should put out there that you have a page on Facebook. I mean, you have your own page, but there's also a Liz's Literati page where your fans can, follow along with you and chime in. And you're actually, asking people what they would like to see you write, because you do have this 5-year multi-book plan. So if people want to check that out and, they have specific interests, they can sort of nudge you in that direction, which is fun.
Yeah. I have a couple of like not even real ideas, but they're very bare bones at this point, for a couple of different genres. And I'm just kind of curious what people who like to read my books think, and what kind of genres they like the most and which ones I should focus on first. So I'm already working on an alchemy kind of young adult fantasy book. It's going to be a standalone, which is unusual for me.
Again, you say that now.
Yeah. We'll see.
So let me ask you this then. I don't know. I had a thought. It left me. It will come back to me. Oh, all right. No, I know what it is. Sorry about that. I have these little brain farts or whatever they call them. Like, wow, I'm aging right before your eyes. But anyway, in addition to COVID-19, which has been a huge adjustment for everybody, you've had a lot of changes in your own personal life recently. I mean, you've written while working, you've written while pregnant, you've written with a newborn, and then, written in the age of COVID-19. So can you talk a little bit about, what your discipline is like, what your writing schedule is like, and how you adjust to all these big life changes? And also, you mentioned staying focused and being disciplined, but also how much leeway you allow yourself, given the amount of things that tend to change in life.
Yeah. My writing has changed so much over the past couple of years. When I was working full time, I would bring my Chromebook to work, and I would write for an hour on my lunchtime, and it was the most writing like focus that I've had, because that's all I was going to do and eat my lunch. And
And that.
I had my son in 2018, and my writing changed. The Starless Girl, The Realm of Camellia, was finished before he was born, which was part of my plan. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do any writing. So I finished writing it, and it was published the following May, which was great. And as he's gotten older, I've been able to get more writing time in. And when he was very young, I had my phone open on Google Drive, and I was writing with one finger, in the middle of the night when when I was feeding him. But I got a couple of words down, and right now with all of the COVID going on, things haven't changed much for me writing wise. My only downtime is when I don't have parenting time, so it's still the same.
Sure. And let me ask you too, because you mentioned, that writing is one thing, but there are, so many other aspects of an author's job that I think a lot of people don't realize, that really writing the book, a lot of times that's not the end of the story. Sometimes that's almost the easy part, because then there are so many things to consider afterwards. So can you talk a little bit about what those other aspects of being a writer in today's world are, and how you balance those things with the actual time to write?
Yeah. I wish I could say I had like a plan or a checklist or anything like that for myself, but I kind of just, oh, I need to do this, oh, I need to do that, when these things crop up. And lately, what I've been focusing on that hasn't been writing is learning more about advertising on Amazon, because I'm not getting out and physically selling any books.
Right.
So I've been trying to learn more about selling online and the best ways to do that. And I also have spent a lot of time trying to have my audiobook produced. I have a very lovely narrator for the our Sarah books, and I get to sit down and listen to all the chapters and follow along and read and listen to those, and that was a really fun experience for me because that was new. But other than that, it's a lot of keeping track of emails and formatting and page numbers and things like that.
Yeah, it doesn't end.
Yeah.
And you're right too. I mean, obviously right now you can't sort of get out there and promote your books in the way that you would have in years past. But all that too, once the book comes out, you're expected to sell it everywhere. And it's not just the time of the event, but getting there, getting back, gas for your car. So it's a lot. But I also wanted to ask you because, as if you haven't done enough, if you're not busy enough, you are also a crafter and you have your own Etsy shop. And I have to say, one of my favorite bookmarks is one of yours, and I bought it from Cindy's store, the book club. Well, now she's the book club on the go, but it's great because it's basically, drink coffee and read. And I'm like, that's pretty much my life minus, the real responsibilities. But can you talk about the kinds of crafts that you make, the people that might enjoy them, and where they can find those?
Yeah. I use on Instagram a lot the hashtag author with too many hobbies because I just like to craft a lot of different things. But my Etsy shop, it's all paper bookmarks that are all cut out and laminated, and I've got I don't know, like maybe 60 different designs, and I just do that in my my other spare time. And I named my little shop LD Writes and Designs, so Liz Delton Writes and Designs. And it's handy because I also have my paperbacks for sale in my Etsy shop. So if somebody wants a signed copy, I can easily do a transaction through Etsy. And that was kind of my motivation for starting an Etsy shop. I was like, oh, I can put my books in there and sell, whatever craft I'm going to do. And I set it on these paper bookmarks, and they've just been pretty popular. And, it's just a simple little thing, but I get a lot of enjoyment out of them. Other people get a lot of enjoyment out of them. So it's fun.
We readers eat that stuff up. So you should have a new website, www.lizdeltondoesn'tsleep.com, because it sounds like I don't know how you do. I don't know how you function, but it's great because you seem to find a way to, give time and energy to all of your passions, which is pretty terrific. And actually, I think that's a nice ending point. I want to ask you, people oftentimes have a desire to write, and maybe they don't have the confidence, or they feel like they don't have the skills. For those people, and maybe particularly, for younger people who feel like that might be their calling, if you had to give them a few words of encouragement or advice, things that have worked well for you, what would you say to them?
I'd say just sit down and write. Just sit down and do whatever you want to do. When I approach something that I've never done before, I usually have an inkling that I want to do this thing, like writing, and I'll just be like, I'm just gonna do it. So I'll sit down and do the thing, and that's kind of how I approach everything. Like if I get an inkling that I want to do something that I've never done before, I'll just sit down and do it. It's just kind of my personality, so that does work for me. But if you don't sit down and write, you're not gonna write anything, and that's the way it is. But if you just sit down and write, and have some people read your work. And I had a lot of help from a writers group that I met at book club, bookstore, and I'm still involved. And to get people to support you in whatever endeavor you want to do is really a good help to get your motivation going, because other people know that you're doing something, and they can offer you advice or encouragement. But I think the accountability is also a huge factor.
Say the dirty A word, accountability. It's true. So thank you so much for your time, Liz. I just want to remind people that Writer's Notebook is available right now. And as you said, you can get a signed copy on your Etsy shop. I love signed copies. They're also my crack. So a writer's, a craft book that's signed by the author, that's like the Bible. But anyway, and also The Storm King will be out on Tuesday, June 9th. So thank you for taking time out of your very, very busy schedule to be with us tonight. We appreciate it, and continued luck to you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. That's it for this episode of Central Booking. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a thing.